Welcome to Vision News Today, your window to the world's latest stories and breaking headlines. Stay updated with global events, politics, and insights that matter. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the vision of today's news. The news broke with a force that seemed to freeze the country in its tracks, every television and phone screen lighting up with the same urgent headline. It was like a thunderclap across a tense nation, echoing through living rooms, offices, and city streets, as millions paused to absorb the gravity of what had just happened. On September 20, 2025, the Supreme Court of the United States delivered a landmark decision that would alter the course of American economic history. In a sweeping and unexpected move, the justices dismantled the tariff regime that had defined Donald J. Trump's presidency, overturning years of contentious policy and debate. The ruling sent shockwaves through the country, igniting celebration in some quarters, outrage in others, and sparking fierce debate everywhere from the halls of Congress to kitchen tables across America. For businesses long burdened by tariffs, it was nothing short of liberation. Owners who had struggled to keep their doors open now saw hope for recovery, and workers looked forward to a future with fewer layoffs and more opportunity. But for supporters of the former president, the decision was a devastating blow, a rejection of the policies they believed protected American jobs and industries. Many felt betrayed, their faith in the system shaken. Consumers, who had paid higher prices for everyday goods for years, now glimpsed relief on the horizon. Families hoped their grocery bills would finally shrink, and shoppers compared prices with cautious optimism. The decision dominated headlines and social media feeds, with commentators and citizens alike weighing in. The deep divisions the tariffs had created were on full display, as Americans argued over what the ruling meant for the country's future. More than a technical ruling, it was a verdict on America's role in the world and the limits of presidential power. Legal scholars debated its implications, while the international community watched closely, aware that the decision would ripple far beyond U.S. borders. As the nation processed the news, one thing was clear. The fallout from this historic legal battle was just beginning, and its impact would be felt for years to come. The dawn of the modern tariff wars can be traced to a series of bold executive actions, each deeply rooted in a rising tide of economic nationalism. In the late 2010s, the United States found itself at a crossroads, grappling with the realities of a rapidly shifting global economy. Many Americans felt that the country's manufacturing base was eroding, and that foreign competitors, especially China, were gaining an unfair advantage at the expense of American workers and industries. President Trump, echoing these concerns, argued that decades of what he called unfair trade practices had left the U.S. vulnerable. He insisted that China's aggressive economic policies, including intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers, demanded a tough and immediate response from Washington. In response, the administration imposed a sweeping 10% duty on nearly all imports, a move that sent shockwaves through global markets and signaled a dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy. These initial tariffs were soon followed by even higher duties on specific goods in targeted countries, escalating tensions and sparking fears of a full-blown trade war. The legal foundation for these sweeping actions was the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, a law originally designed to address extraordinary threats to national security and the economy. By declaring a national emergency, the administration invoked IEEPA's broad powers, allowing the president to restrict or regulate commerce in the name of protecting American interests. Supporters of the tariffs hailed them as a long-overdue defense of American jobs, industries, and national sovereignty. They argued that these measures would level the playing field and restore America's economic strength. Critics, however, warned of serious economic harm, predicting higher prices for consumers, supply chain disruptions, and the risk of global retaliation that could spiral into a prolonged trade conflict. Many economists pointed out that tariffs function as a hidden tax on both consumers and businesses, raising costs on everyday goods and threatening to slow economic growth. Despite mounting controversy and heated debate, the administration pressed forward, convinced that the short-term pain was a necessary price for a fundamental reordering of America's place in the global economy. These actions set the stage for a monumental legal and political conflict, one that would test the limits of presidential power and reshape the future of international trade for years to come. The legal challenge against the Trump tariffs centered on a core constitutional question: Did the president truly have the authority to impose broad tariffs without direct approval from Congress? Plaintiffs argued the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to set tariffs, and that IEPA was never meant as a blank check for executive action by the White House. The administration countered that IEPA's broad language allowed swift action in emergencies, and that presidents need flexibility in foreign affairs to protect national interests. This clash, strict congressional power versus broad executive authority, set the stage for a legal showdown with profound and lasting implications. The legal battle began in the United States Court of International Trade, which sided with businesses challenging the tariffs. The court found that IEPA could not authorize such a sweeping tariff structure. The Trump administration appealed, but the Federal Circuit upheld the lower court, reaffirming Congress's primary power to impose tariffs. President Trump responded with fury, warning of economic disaster. Despite setbacks, the tariffs remained in effect pending a Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case on an expedited schedule, recognizing its national importance. All eyes turned to the 9 justices, awaiting a decision that would shape the future of American trade policy. In a decisive 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court declared President Trump's broad-based tariffs unconstitutional. The majority opinion held that the power to impose tariffs is a core legislative function, and Congress must delegate such authority with clear, specific language. The court found IEPA lacked that clarity, and allowing the president to act unilaterally would upend the constitutional balance. The ruling drew on historical precedent, emphasizing that the president's power is at its lowest when acting against Congress's will. The dissent warned the decision would weaken future presidents, but the majority's judgment stood, ending the Trump tariff era. The message was clear: the president cannot bypass Congress to enact sweeping economic policy. At the heart of this landmark case was a fundamental question: who truly holds the reins of power when it comes to regulating foreign commerce, the president or Congress? This issue goes beyond a simple legal dispute. It strikes at the very core of how the United States government balances authority and maintains checks and balances between its branches. The framers of the Constitution, wary of unchecked executive power, deliberately vested the authority to regulate commerce and set tariffs in Congress. By doing so, they ensured that economic policy would be shaped by the people's representatives, reflecting a broad consensus rather than the will of a single leader. This design was meant to keep economic decisions transparent, accountable, and responsive to the nation's needs. Over the years, Congress has sometimes chosen to delegate certain powers to the executive branch, especially in times of crisis or when swift action was needed. However, the Supreme Court's decision in this case reasserted that Congress must remain the primary architect of trade policy, and that any delegation of power must be carefully limited and clearly defined. The court made it clear that while Congress can delegate some authority, it cannot abdicate its core constitutional responsibilities. Any transfer of power must come with explicit, detailed instructions, ensuring that Congress retains ultimate control and oversight over major economic decisions. In this instance, the use of IEPA to justify sweeping tariffs was found to lack the kind of clear, direct instruction that the Constitution requires. The court emphasized that such significant actions demand unmistakable congressional approval, not broad or vague authorizations. The ruling sends a powerful message. There are firm constitutional limits to presidential power in matters of commerce. Future presidents will need to work closely with Congress and secure explicit legislative backing before taking major trade actions that could reshape the economy. Ultimately, this decision serves as a vital reminder that the structure of the Constitution and the principle of accountability are essential to American democracy. They cannot be set aside, even in the name of executive efficiency or speed. The Supreme Court's decision brought relief to businesses and consumers, ending years of uncertainty and high costs. Trump and his supporters denounced the ruling, warning of economic doom and accusing the court of betrayal. The heated reaction underscored the deep political divisions the tariffs had exposed. Beyond economics, the decision reaffirmed the rule of law and the principle that no president is above the Constitution. It was a check on the expansion of presidential power and a moment of clarity for American democracy. The end of the Trump tariff era is more than a policy shift. It's a pivotal moment in the story of American governance. In striking down the tariffs, the Supreme Court defended the very architecture of American democracy.